Welcome to the Everyday Matters podcast, a show from Netsmart. Everyday Matters is about the opportunity we have to make a difference. Our collective, cause-connected mission is about impacting healthcare in meaningful ways. We seek to provide a place to share stories about the progress being made, how to overcome challenges, and ideas to inspire. Each conversation is about the work being done and the opportunity before us. Whether it's about advocacy, awareness, or challenging stigmas, we know that together anything and everything is possible. Let's get into the show, where we learn from yesterday in pursuit of tomorrow. Here, we all work to ensure every day matters.
Well, welcome everyone to another Everyday Matters podcast, an opportunity for us to connect and share stories and learn from other people about the work they're doing in the community to make a difference. And I'm here with Erik Erazo today. I've had the opportunity, you and I have gotten connected in the community working on various things. And even recently, we see each other more frequently as our paths cross, doing some amazing things. Before we get started in today's conversation, can you introduce yourself a little bit and what your role and what you do in the community?
Sure. Yeah. My name is Erik Erazo, and I'm the Executive Director of Student and Community Engagement for the Olathe School District. So my department oversees the interpreters for the school district. We have 20 full-time and about 150 freelance. We also oversee our migrant department, which is kids that migrate from state to state due to agriculture. We make sure that they're going to be on path to graduation.
Yeah.
And we also just do our community engagement, which consists of being on boards and just being in a lot of meetings, but really being connected with the community. And of course, our student engagement, which is the biggest part of what we do.
Yeah. And how long have you been doing that role?
You know, that particular role has only been a couple of years, but I've been in the district for 20 years in multiple different roles.
Yeah, and I knew the 20 years. And so you've seen a lot of change. Has things changed over the last 20 years, I guess I should say?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, very, very much so.
Yeah, it's been kind of an amazing journey we've been on. You and I have had some great conversations, and we've even connected on some of the hobbies and our love for classic cars, which you drive a classic car, because I always know when you're in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Which it makes a statement.
I'm actually driving a minivan right now.
Oh, yeah. Well, that makes a statement too. So, so very, very cool. We're here to talk specifically, about the Lowrider Club and get into some of that, but also the impact that it's made on the community. It's more than just a club. It's more than just a program, if you will. And I've seen that firsthand. Recently, you've won an award for collaboration and working with not just within the school and students and parents, but with law enforcement as well, and really reinventing some of these relationships.
Right.
And I think it's been really cool. But to hear the stories firsthand has been inspiring. And that's why we're here today, is to talk with Erik, learn about the initiative and program. And I guess, Erik, let's start with that. What was the vision and mission that you had for this club?
You know, I got to tell you, to really dive into the mission and vision, I got to tell you just briefly about my story and tell you how that really ties into what I'm doing today. So I'm originally from California. I was born and raised in San Francisco. And my parents were immigrants. They came from Guatemala in the late 70s. And the neighborhood that I grew up in was an established Hispanic neighborhood in the Mission District, which I think today you go there and all you see is coffee shops and hipsters. But at the time, it was a very Latino community. And I grew up loving lowriders, loving everything about them, wanting to have one day. But there was a stigma to that it was gang related.
Right.
And, in the neighborhood that I grew up in had a lot of gangs and a lot of issues. So I grew up really wanting to be in that lifestyle. And I think wanting to do that, I think that the negative, aspect of that was also kind of there trying to pull me in. So I think, I grew up, I think if you look at a statistic of, what a young Latino male in this type of neighborhood would grow up to be, I was fitting that mold at the very beginning. I was getting in trouble. I was a teen dad. I had dropped out of school. I wasn't doing great in school. I was very fortunate that I was able to get my diploma through the mail. I guess that would be like online today, but that's how it was back in the day.
Yeah.
And after doing so, I met my beautiful wife, and I had my second daughter was born. And that's when I decided that I needed to do something for myself. And I joined the military. Was there in Germany. My twins were born, so now I'm in my early 20s with 4 kids. came back to California. I saw that my neighborhood hadn't really changed at all. I didn't want to be there again. I felt, really frustrated. And so I had family in Kansas who had been here for a long time. And one of my cousins invited me to come check out a business that potentially we could purchase. And the business wasn't going to work out. But while I was here, I saw how cheap the housing was here.
Right.
And I could tell you, just to put it in perspective, my dad had had a bankruptcy and lost his house, and it had termite damage, no heating, no AC, 1,300 square foot, and sold for $650,000. So, to come here at that time, specifically in the early 2000s, and see that houses were selling here for $80,000, it was amazing. So I applied for a home loan, not knowing anything about anything. And of course, this is before the economy collapsed. So I was able to get a loan for a house with like an 11% interest rate, which I knew nothing about. But I was able to get into a home, and I needed to really get a full-time job going because the only income I had was military income that was about to end. And I ended up applying for Hummer, hoping that they would hire me at the time. But they were way behind on looking at applications. And so in the meantime, I asked to come in to be a security guard, to see if somebody can hire me to be a security guard. Right. And they did. And the very first place I landed was Olathe North High School 20 years ago as a security guard, with like zero intention of ever being in education. And once I got there, I saw that there was this large population of Hispanic kids because people were coming to the Johnson County area to build Gardner, right? So we had a lot of landscaping, and we had roofers, and we had framers and construction workers. And I would see that these kids were, somewhat lost because they were trying to find an identity. And I think that the same negative influences that I grew up with were then spreading through YouTube and music videos and things like that. And they were starting to identify with that. And, I think a kid would see themselves small, in such a big area where there wasn't a lot of people that looked like them. But if they could say or pretend or walk or behave like if they were in that lifestyle, that gang lifestyle, then they would feel like they had a little bit more power and a place to belong. So I really, my mission at that time, after a lot of different things happened, was that if I was going to pursue this education career, I was going to make programming that was going to help kids keep their identity, keep the beautiful things about our culture, but be able to be successful in a positive way and not have to, dive into that negative activity. And that's why a lot of my programming exists, including Hispanic Leadership Club, and then, of course, the Bike Club.
Well, I mean, Erik, that part of this story is so fundamental to where you find yourselves today. And yet we all know that within our story, we have choices or moments that are kind of tipping points, if you will, to the direction that we're going. If you don't mind, is there a moment or a tipping point that really helped you navigate this path, either through something that was challenging or something that was good, or someone who stepped in to say, have you thought about this?
So when I first came to Olathe, and I was at the high school, and I would see kids that were, maybe wearing something that was, gang related or anything like that, I would go to counselors and I would say, hey, you guys should talk to these kids about this. And the counselors would always say, can you talk to them? And I was not comfortable at the beginning. And I was not a teacher. I was not wanting to be a teacher at the very beginning. I was just like, hey, I'm here for a couple of months, and that's that, right? But as I started talking to kids, I started really enjoying the fact that I could relate to them and kind of walk them through things. And I could tell you there was one point that I'll never forget. I actually had been asked to go speak to a young man at a middle school who had came to us from Texas. And you could absolutely tell that he had been in a very rough situation prior to coming to us. And I was asked to go speak to him. So in my mind, well, I should look like a teacher, right? I should act like a teacher if I'm going to go anywhere. And I didn't necessarily know what that meant, but I knew that I should, put on a long sleeve shirt and just try to look like a teacher. And so I went to go talk to this kid, and I was trying to speak the lingo even, hey, buddy, how are you? You really shouldn't do that. And I think this is what I'm supposed to do, right? And I don't know how to do that. It's not coming out naturally. And I remember the kid looked at me and he said, you don't know what the heck you're talking about. Dude. Like, I'm not going to sit here and waste my time with you. Quit talking to me. And at that point, I just dropped the act, if you will. And I was like, look, homie, let me tell you where I'm from. Right.
Yes.
And the kid listened to me and he was paying attention and I was able to have an impact. And I think up to that point, I felt that everything that I had gone through in my life was a huge, giant mistake, every bit of it. Right.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I felt like it was almost God saying like, dude, no, it wasn't. Right.
Yeah.
Like you lived through all that craziness and you have like a master's degree in this. Right.
Yeah.
And now you get to use it with these kids. And I think that was one of those moments where I was like, I am going to pursue this. I'm going to try to do this. Now, the funny thing about it was I had no idea what it took. So I went to a counselor and I said, hey, I'm going to be a teacher. What do I got to do? So in my mind, I thought maybe 6-month program.
Right. Let's just get this done with. Right.
Of course, a bachelor's and master's later, I found out what it's going to take. But I did have a lot of great people at the Olathe School District, counselors and administrators that walked me through the process because I did not know what I was doing.
And how many years ago was that?
I want to say that was at the very beginning. So I started, like I said, I was only there for maybe 3 months.
Right.
So it was at the very beginning.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I think I just want to, let's just focus on that for a second because you've given so much good stuff there that I think are just great reminders for us. The first one I like that you said is, hey, I need to find someone to talk to this kid.
Right.
And that someone was you. Right. I think sometimes the answers we're looking for begin within. Versus finding someone else. I think and that's just a good reminder for us that sometimes the solutions or the answers to things we're looking for are us taking that step. And you didn't start that way, but then quickly found out I am the one. And then we're all trying to figure out what we want to be when we grow up. I don't care what age we're at. And I love that part of it that you go in there, okay, I've got to be this and I got to go that. And you were doing that before authenticity was even a word or vulnerability became kind of a thing. And dropping that image, people just want to connect with people.
Right.
We all have a story. We're all more alike than not.
Right.
And when we sit down, we're wanting to be our best selves and removing some of that mask or that facade, if you will, just to get down and have a conversation. What a beautiful moment. But then it didn't stop there. And I think sometimes, we all find when we're looking forward and we want to be a part of that, this is you had to press into more schooling, more education to go do those things. Right. How did what was the tipping point to say that wasn't 3 months like you said or 6 months?
Right.
That was years.
Right.
Where did you find the energy to stay with that, to go make that happen?
So once I found out what I had to do and I was kind of pushed into going and talking to a college counselor, I would work. I actually ended up getting a job as an in-school suspension supervisor. So I would do that for 8 hours. Then I would do detention. And then I would drive down to Kansas City, Kansas to take night classes.
Very cool.
And in that same process, I started looking at data and trying to figure out why there was such a strong correlation between high school dropout and gang involvement. So anywhere you see a city that has a large, population of kids dropping out, you see a large number of gangs in the area. And I wanted to find out why that was. And what I found out was that the gangs had found the formula, which was relationship building. You talk about another word that's hot now that wasn't then, right?
Yep.
And so I realized that the gangs were reaching our kids at the elementary level, at the elementary age, by introducing the concept. Middle school, more responsibility. By the time they're in high school, they feel that they're in too deep to quit. And traditionally, this is when counselors would pull you in and tell you, hey, stop doing what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
And that's that. Well, that's a very hard ask to do. So I started building my very first program, which was Hispanic Leadership Club, where I would meet with kids at the elementary level and introduce the concept of leadership and talk to them and let them relax and be themselves and tell me what was going on, with their lives, and then really pump them up for that middle school piece and say, man, once you get to middle school, we'll get to do so many cool things. And by the time they were in high school, they were in too deep to quit. So I was so invested in developing a program that was going to take years to build because I wanted to see the outcome at the high school level with the kids that I had started with at elementary, that I think that was a large part of the motivation to continue with my education, because I knew that I almost had to get that degree to meet them at the end, right? I was on a classified role versus a certified role, meaning a certified teacher. And I wanted to have the ability to really move that group forward as a certified teacher. And I wasn't that yet. I also had my kids at home, and I wanted to provide a great environment for them. And so it wasn't easy, because going through the night classes at the community college and then having to go weekends to Pitt State, it was tough, but it was totally worth it, because it matched, I think, my vision for what I wanted my career to essentially be.
Well, and I think you grabbed a hold to the story you wanted to write in your life, and you used the story that found you. Some things find us in life, some we find, we choose forward.
Correct.
And I heard you even a couple of different times talk about, I was frustrated with this, and I was able to go there, and you channeled that energy in such a way that not only did you want to help yourself, your family, your community, and others.
Correct.
And that's what's, I think, so powerful about the work that you're doing, you're continuing to do. And I know there's a lot more of it. I'm here with Erik Erazo, and we're talking about his story, but even bigger, about how he took his story and the things that found him and used it and channeled it in such a way to help others. And I think that's the beauty and the power of community, is when we come together and connect and say, how can we each help each other be our best selves? That's the whole mindset and idea behind Everyday Matters. Erik, I want to segue to the next part of that, and thank you for taking the time to share that. But now we clearly understand where that foundation came from, and then at some point emerged Lowrider Bike Club.
Correct.
Can you talk a little bit about that, how that began, and also kind of what the vision and mission behind that part of your story is all about?
Absolutely. So once I had Hispanic Leadership Club, it was very much so built initially to work with the at-risk population, right? At risk not to graduate. As it grew, it became highly academic, which was fantastic. That's where we wanted it to go, right? So kids started going to college visits, enrolling in college. Now had siblings that were, getting their degrees, and they were automatically jumping into the club because they wanted to be, go to college and be successful. And the club still exists today. But what ended up happening was I started seeing that there was kids again that were kind of falling between the cracks, and they did not feel like they fit into Hispanic Leadership Club because it was an academic program, right?
Yep.
And so I started diving into data again, and the data makes it almost sound simple if you really look at it. And it says all you have to do is provide extracurricular activities and mentoring for kids that are at risk. But what that really means is to take a kid that's not engaged in school, keep him or her after school, and talk about his or her feelings with adults. Well, that's a really hard thing to do, right? And so what I did was kind of dig into my passion and my past, and I've always been into custom cars and custom anything. And I know that when I was a kid, lowrider bikes were it for me. So I asked the Olathe Public Schools Foundation for a grant. I went out and bought some bike kits. I built one of them, and I had it at the high school. So then kids would, walk by and say, man, I like the bike. Can I have it? And I'd be like, well, you can come over on Monday and build it if you want. So then kids started coming to the program because of the bike, not because of, mentoring, right? But of course, once they got there, we had to have somebody help them build it. Yep. And that's when they were getting their mentoring. So that was kind of the beginning of the club. And then the mission with that was to really allow kids to find a place to belong, but to also allow them to keep their identity. You see, a lot of times when I would ask kids, describe what success looks like to you, they rarely describe themselves or their parents or people in their community. It doesn't look like them, right? And I wanted our kids to know that you can still be you and be successful. And I think this was a big part of it, because low riding is part of our culture and our community.
Well, and I think it goes back to your first engagement of how you started. You tried to be someone else.
Correct.
When you first engaged on that.
Correct.
And that was a learning moment, because you were not connecting at that time with that student. And they're like, you don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
Boom, you drop that mask and you say, let's get real.
Right.
And I think you're pressing in on a topic that's a little complicated these days around being you. And I love it.
Right.
Because in even correlating that thought that, hey, what success looked like wasn't even them, where they came from.
Right.
And you were reframing, why not you?
Right.
Why not celebrate these things and press into it? Curious as you began. So let's before we get into some of how the club works.
Sure.
What's your desired outcome for those who come into the club?
Our desired outcome is for our kids to graduate. That's number one. So I can tell you that based on that, I have to dive into how it does work.
Right.
So the way it works is each kid that comes into the program will get a bike kit. It's in a box. It's about $300. The kids will then build that bike throughout their high school career, and it'll get painted multiple different times, and different things will get added to it. They'll also get to take that bike and show it off at different car shows and events. This is my bike. However, they do not get to take that bike home and keep it until they graduate high school. And so that's the motivation behind it, is to say, and I got to tell you that once they're done with their bike, it went from $350 to potentially $5,000
Yeah.
of custom bike.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, kids will come in immediately and say, "Man, once I build that bike, I'm going to sell it." I've not yet had a kid sell their bike, but the mission there is to really get them to graduate. And so far, we have a 100% graduation rate since 2017 when we launched.
Okay, say that again. What's the graduation rate?
100%.
That's, I mean, I'm going to give you a fist bump.
Thanks,
here.
Man.
That is amazing, and that's impactful, making a difference in the community. Very, very cool. What are some of the things when you began standing up the club? So, well, let's get into a couple of tactics,
Sure.
First of all. So how many days a week do they come?
So we meet once a week on Mondays, but we also have another program we meet on Tuesdays.
Okay.
So,
and can anybody join the club?
Anybody in the Olathe School District can join the club. So, and I know that, so far we've talked heavily on the Hispanic population, but
Right.
we don't only have Hispanic students in the club. And, we're very inclusive. We want everybody to come in and enjoy something, that we get to share with everybody.
Yeah.
So any student that is in high school gets to join our particular club. However, we do have chapters now
Right.
at the middle schools as well.
Yeah.
So if they're in middle school, they get to do that in school. And
Yeah.
if they're high school kids, they get to drive over to Olathe Advanced Technical Center and participate in our bigger club.
Well, and I think one thing, because those who aren't familiar or have seen, and we'll work to include some pictures. These aren't bicycles.
Right.
These are works of art.
They're art.
I mean, it is absolutely a marriage of form and function to present an idea and a concept that in itself tells a story.
Correct.
When you hear these young adults share what they're doing, it's a part of expressing who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And then even within that, I think some people, it's building a bike. No, it's not. You have to know geometry, mathematics. You have to know chemistry, the paint that is done on these things, and the right time and the mix and all those. You're teaching class through this program just as much as any textbook might teach.
100%.
And I think it's one of the things that, we've got to change is you mentioned it earlier. We do a wonderful job at applauding and awarding academics, but the equal is hands-on, being able to do these things, and we got to celebrate those in the same fashion. And in this, and I've seen some of the stories, so I've got a little more insight than people who may be listening the first time, is you're aspiring individuals say, you know what, I want to go pursue this as a career. You've given them a dream that they didn't even know they had within them, or they tucked away because they couldn't see a path forward. Can you share a little bit about where students have taken this beyond the club?
Absolutely. So, we definitely have students that have taken their skills and said, this is what I want to do as a career. And I'll talk about two of them in particular in here just a second. But we also have the majority of our kids that are not doing anything tech ed related.
Right.
But they learned skills in that bike club, like being on time, getting projects done, putting your stuff away, being responsible, having deadlines, because we take on projects, for example, from the police department. We have one right now we're building for the Johnson County Museum. So they commissioned us to do that. And we had a timeline, and they go out and are able to use those skills in college. But I could tell you about two students in particular. One is Ozzy. So Ozzy came into the program. He was really interested in just working with his hands. He had been working with his dad in sheetrocking and things like that. And he learned how to paint and became one of the best painters, I would say, in the Midwest. So much so that Rob Vanderslice, who is a world famous painter and actually runs our club in Albuquerque, found out about Ozzy, scholarshiped him to come out and take his class. And the very next year, Ozzy was actually co-teaching with Rob.
No way.
A class because he's that good. And now he has his own little side company where he paints custom custom bikes. And we also have my son was also part of the program, and now he has his own little company called Brown Boy Media, where he does video production, photography, very focused on the lowrider community. He's actually, some of his pictures, he should find out actually, I think tomorrow, if they're going to make it to the Smithsonian. So he has, really taken off, and all that has come out of our club.
Well, I'm here with Erik Erazo, and as he just shared, we talked about your story, and you just connected it to how your story and paying it forward and helping other people with their story. Not only that, leaving a trail, each helping each other through that, and hearing the story of Ozzy and others and being able to go do that is absolutely amazing. This is how we help each other and reach a healthy and thriving community. Now, I'm going to ask you one thing. You mentioned Albuquerque in another chapter. So this isn't just about Olathe anymore. And I know you've been invited to talk to other people. Can you talk about kind of how this is picked up beyond Olathe and how other people are learning about this across the country?
So, crazy story. I was at church and I was giving my testimony, and part of that, of course, is my work. And the special agent in charge of the DEA at the time went to my church. I had no idea. And she reaches out and she says, Erik, I love what you're doing. How can the DEA get involved? So she makes it happen. She put something out there that wasn't something that they were already doing, which was funding programs like mine. She helped us out financially, and they became a sponsor. Well, we had found out that in Albuquerque, New Mexico, they had built a lowrider police car in their community, where our club built a lowrider police car. Our kids built one.
Right.
So we reached out and said, hey, we're kind of doing the same thing with the cars. We'd love to chat. So we started chatting, and they said, hey, we're missing the student component of that. We said, hey, we can show you how to do the student component of that. So when we went to Albuquerque to meet with them, and we started a little group of national community policing and seeing if we can invite other states to come out, we started talking about them implementing the bike club. Well, we also invited the DEA locally from Albuquerque. They came out and they say, hey, if you guys replicate what Olathe doing, we will help fund that.
Wow.
So then now that grew to Albuquerque, New Mexico, Española, New Mexico. We're looking at El Paso. We also have a chapter in KCK through the Police Athletic League. And then we also have a chapter getting ready to launch in Missouri through the Latino Arts Foundation.
Well, that's absolutely amazing. And I'm guessing, it's just the challenge will be how to scale it in such a way that you don't lose the heart of it.
Right.
And I know that's something you're really passionate about. And part of this opportunity, as I've learned more and more about your story and the work that everyone is doing, is this connection with the police and law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
And some would say, why'd you do that? And that's especially in these times where there's a lot of tension. I mean, there's a lot of questions, and there's a lot of mistrust by both parties on how do we work together. Tell us about why, instead of you saying no, you've pressed into that.
Correct.
And they're actually part of the club and are working with the students to build these bicycles.
Correct. So, it's a great question. So here's what happened. I had kids, specifically when this division really happened and the whole we don't like the cops thing was really strong. And I asked the kids why they felt that way. None of them had a major negative incident with the police, but none of them had ever had a positive interaction with the police, only negative interactions.
Right.
And what I mean by that is getting pulled over, getting a ticket, or, I got in a fight, they took me to juvenile hall, things like that. And what I realized was that the way that they were talking about this entity that they felt was going to be against them, they felt like they were limited in what they could do, where they could go, how they could function in society. It was holding them back. And I didn't want them to be held back by this idea that the police were going to get them, right? And so I reached out to the police chief and I said, Chief, can you send me a police officer that's down to earth, that's not going to come in uniform, because I'm not sure if we're ready for that. And they did. They said they sent Officer Logan Bonney to come out. He's a great guy. He's one of our biggest mentors today. And he came out and was able to chat it up with the kids. And I'm a strong believer in building bridges together. And I think a lot of times when we build a bridge, we are shocked that people don't come our way because we built this amazing bridge. But what we don't realize is we didn't build it together. So they don't know if it's sturdy, if it's going to hold hold up, if it's going to be strong enough. They also don't know if they can trust what's on the other side. And I think more importantly, we forget that a bridge is two-way. It's not just one way. You can go back and forth. So what that really created was a partnership where we build a bridge with the police department, where not only did we have students that are huge advocates of the police, love the police, want to be police officers,
That's
some of them,
cool.
but we also ended up with a lowrider police bike at the chief's office, a lowrider police car, and a bunch of officers that are hanging out at quinceañeras every weekend.
Right. And I think that's, man, so much there I want to unpack, but I want to hit on the main point there, and your bridge analogy is spot on. And I think in a time when we're trying to figure out how to help our communities be better, to be more healthy, you said, I'm going to build a bridge. And instead of isolation or instead of no, not now, you're like, hey, I'm going to find a way. This may not work, but I'm going to press into this and see what happens. And we have to evolve how our communities function and work. And what got us here isn't going to get us there. And reality, and you said this earlier around relationship, life runs on the rails of relationships. And when there is no relationship, we shouldn't be surprised at the challenges. When there are relationships, good things happen. And your point around positive, you're right. Most engagement with law enforcement that if we stumble across it's around not positive things or can be, but it can also be positive. And at the end of the day, there's a desire by that organization to want to do good within the community as well. And you've each opened up a door for that. And your point around, hey, bridge is two-way, it's not one way. You know, I'll hear people say, well, I have an open door policy. Well, open door is not good enough. You need to have a walk around policy. Because open door just says, hey, when you want to come talk. And you said, hey, I don't need an open door. I'm going to build a bridge, walk across, and this is how we're going to do it. Well done. I think there's a lot that we can learn in all aspects of life. I want to switch and segue to another topic, and that is around, you had these ideas, you know, around, hey, I want to be able to go do this. You used your own story, some of the challenges to be able to go do that. And I think that resides in a lot of people, but it's not always action or found that way. And I'm guessing this was a layup for you to go do. That, hey, you just went there and everyone just gave you accolades and they were throwing money at you left and right. Yeah, I know it wasn't. As a matter of fact, I told you earlier, I did some research and came across one of your first grant applications. And I love it because you talked about your students and the things that you wanted to do and the examples that are out there. If it were easy, everyone would do it. It's not easy. And Erik, I know this has been a work, and I use the work with intent to be able to go. And not everyone's always on board. What would you say to someone out there who has an idea around this, to using their story, finding a way to build bridges in community? How do you go operationalize that?
You know, it's not easy. And I think that's the key concept that I think we all have to keep in mind. And for me, you know, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it, you know, and I'm going to go 100%. And I think that the idea I had specifically at the time that we started, you know, even back in the early 2000s when I was putting the club together, it wasn't always seen with an open door policy, right? Not even come in and talk to me, you know, it was like, you know, I don't want to see it. It's not something that we need in our community or want in our community. But I had to understand and I hate to call it this, but I had to understand the game, right? And I mean that in a positive way, that there's a system for everything. And you can't win the game if you're not in the game, right? And so when coming up with, I think, new ideas, a lot of times we get really stuck in being a little bit too emotional or abrasive about what we want to get done, because we're so hardcore about it and we believe about it so much that the doors aren't going to open because it's too big right now. It's something that I don't know if I could swallow, right? So understanding the language, I think, of our community and what they wanted to see in the community, which was our students being successful, right? So how then do I focus everything I'm trying to do, but make sure that it fits into what people are wanting to get accomplished in the community, and then not stopping, right? Not everybody was okay with it. Not everybody was on board with it. But then I had somebody that was. And then I said, hey, this person believed in it. You know, you look at what they believed in, why they believed in it, right? And let's get you on board. And it took a lot of me being persistent, but passionate about what I was doing. And I think that's another key concept, that is, if you are going to come up with an idea and you have all these experiences, you're going to push it forward, make sure it is something that you truly do believe in. Because if you do, you're going to be passionate and people will see that in you, but have answers to the questions.
I like it. Persistence is, these things aren't met with open arms often, and new idea. And there's a lot of other things going on. It's not even sometimes that people don't like it. It just sounds like a lot of work.
It does, yeah.
And we've got these other things, and why this? Your comment around passion is at the end of the day, sometimes that's all that gets you through.
Right.
If you don't have that passion to see it through, no, there's not going to be enough accolades or anything else to be able to go get there. And I've sensed you've connected your passion with your story 100%. And saying, hey, I'm going to be able to take the things that I've learned through my story and help other people's. And you've connected your passion twofold. It's about leveraging what I've learned so that I can give to others and help other people do it.
Correct.
And then your last part around be ready to answer questions. And also I hear a lot of listening, collaboration,
100%.
Things that seem really hard today. You've learned, and what I hear in the students, they're learning that as well. I love the project that you shared when they taking on the current build for the museum. Well, what would you like to see? What would you like to do? That may not necessarily be some of the things that they want to do, and how to go do that. And we've got to get back to constructive conversation again. And I think this club and everything that you're doing, I think gives us it's a guiding, it's a compass for us on how we're able to go do that. Really, last question on this topic around operationalizing it is, how'd you grow your leadership team?
Oh, that's a great question. So at the very beginning, it was, and still is today, volunteer based. But I had to find the right volunteers, right? I had to find the people that had the passion for the kids, the passion for the program, that they saw more in the students, than some others might, right? A lot of times our students, you kind of feel like you've already written the book on their life, right? Like, oh, I know where that's going to end up. No, you don't. You have no idea, right? You have to believe in the kids. And once I was able to get some of my, believe it or not, prior students that I had that were now grown-ups that were in education now to come out and help me, build the program. And that's what I have. I have prior students that back the program 100% from the community aspect. They came out and worked with kids. Wow. I have welders, I have teachers, and together they had the same passion I did because the initial programming, HLC, was part of their life. We also got, the police involved, and Logan Bonney, like I mentioned, he became, my gosh, he is like one of the guys that is there every week. And so he supported it. And that's how we got that leadership team of core folks that said, we believe the exact same thing and we're going in the same direction and we're going to do it for the kids.
Well, I love that it's your leadership team is centered around a common passion, to use your other words, that we're all united around this thing. And while we bring different experiences, gifts, and ideas and abilities and skills to the table, this is what unites us and brings us together. And I think that's powerful. And I mean, life is a team sport. I mean, it's also, I'm guessing these relationships extend beyond just putting a bike together. People are attending each other, the graduations and events, and celebrating life together and helping and mentoring them in other aspects of life.
100%. And I will tell you, to add on that, this program is not about bikes.
That's what I'm trying to get through. I hope everyone understands bikes is just the door, if you will, the bridge, if you will. And it's about people. Exactly. It's about people helping people. And that's what's so beautiful and why the story needs to be told. Well, last segue. And I'm looking for some personal encouragement from you to that. Let's start with students, and we'll talk about parents in the community. To that student who may be listening to us today, and saying, man, I absolutely resonate with this, but I don't see it. I don't see it for me. I don't see how I can go build this path and journey. What would you encourage them with right now? What would you tell them the next step that they should do after listening to this podcast?
I think the next step for any kid that's listening is, number one, I want to tell any kid that's listening that, man, there's so many people that have your back. So much more than you might think. And, I know that they know a teacher or a counselor or a custodian, it doesn't matter, somebody in that school that they connect with. And I think that, it's important to connect with that person and let them know your goals and what you're trying to accomplish. It's okay to ask for help and guidance, and those people that care about you will help and guide you. And, to find a spot to connect, somewhere to belong, somewhere to really pour yourself into, and to believe in yourself that whatever it is that, you're going through right now, or wherever it is that you are, and you might not think that what you're living through right now or what you're going through right now has value. It absolutely does, because it's making you who you're going to be and who you're going to be able to help as you move forward.
Great, Erik. I mean, and I would guess I want to ask the same question about the parent who's maybe trying to figure out, they don't feel that connection. They see their child struggling a little bit, uncertain of where to go, and and how to help them. And I'm guessing, as much as you connect with kids, you probably also connect with parents.
100%.
And what would you tell them?
A big part of what we do is connecting with the parents. And I think that sometimes the language that we speak is where we're not communicating with our kids, because they almost speak a different language, right? You hear that a lot. It's this idea of, I can't connect because they're into something that I'm not into.
Right.
They like things that I don't like. They're making decisions that I completely disagree with. And I think it's important to allow kids to express what they're into and to be into what they're into. But I think one thing that I always tell parents, and I start every parenting class with this, is, we do a drawing, and I tell them, draw something that reminds you of when you were a little kid.
Yeah.
And initially I think parents say, I'm not going to remember, but they do remember.
Yeah.
And they draw something that's very important to them, and they tear up, right? They get emotional because it reminds them of home. It reminds them of their parents, or going out and getting ice cream or whatever. And I always tell the kids, what will your kids be drawing when they're in this class in the future? Right? Because you're creating that drawing right now. So don't worry about the little things, but focus on how much you can learn from your student, and encourage them and walk that walk with them, because they need a little bit of guidance. But every single one of these kids is an individual, and they're going to bring individuality to who they are, and that's okay.
Yeah. And I think, Erik, more parents feel like that than not. You're not alone either. And we're all trying to help each other navigate forward. And I guess for me, the last one that I would look for your perspective and guidance on is to our communities. Our communities are struggling. There's no question about it. We can look in the news any given day. We know that there's tension, and we're trying to find our way. You are absolutely engaged in the community, and you're not afraid to have any conversation or build any bridge. What would you tell our community that we can do to help each other?
Build those bridges, get to know who is in your community. I think a couple of things. Number one, I find often that when I go into communities that are like, I don't know how to get things done, they're also not aware of what nonprofits exist in the community. Who's doing what, right? Who's working with who? Connect with everybody as much as you possibly can to find out what they're doing in the community. Get involved in the community. Don't just come up with ideas. One thing I will tell you is, I'm a doer. I am not one that's going to call a bunch of people into a room so that we can put up pieces of paper on the wall and write down ideas. I'm going to call you in to tell you, hey guys, here's the project we have. Let's get to work, right? Get out there into your community, connect with your school districts. Most school districts have mentoring programs that you can sign up to be part of. Be there to share that network. A lot of times our communities, specifically our underserved populations, they don't have a big network. Right? Be part of that network. Put yourself out there to mentor, and you'll see that you'll start gradually increasing that connectivity within your community to create amazing things.
I think that's absolutely amazing. The difference we seek is the difference we're willing to make.
Correct.
And I think sometimes we slide into that role of critic, and maybe speaking out around what we don't like versus pressing in around what we can do about it and make a difference. Erik, thank you very much. And last question, I'm going to bring us in for a landing. This is Everyday Matters, and this is an opportunity for us. And our slogan is around being the difference. And it would be remiss of me not to ask you, how do you make every day matter?
I heard somebody say once that everybody is given the same amount of time. Right? Like everybody has the same 24 hours in a day. What you do with it is up to you. And for me, I want to make those 24 hours count. Right? And that's my personal model, that I want to get out there. I want to work in the community. I want to get to know how I can help and how I can bring what I have. And of course, keep my family in mind as well, because you could get sucked into spending too much time out there, but involve them in it, and for me, it's funny because somebody asked me once to talk about what we did over the weekend, but it had to be personal and not work related. And I'm just telling you, me specifically, I couldn't do that because I've brought my family into my work and my passion. So I make every day matter, I think, by being involved as much as I can with my whole community, including my family.
Well, powerful stuff. It's a great encouragement, challenge, reminder to us all on how we make that happen. If people want to find out more about you or the bike club, where can they go do that at?
So the best thing to do is just look us up, Olathe Leadership Lowrider Bike Club. They could just Google that and they'll find our Facebook page. They'll find everything else. And that's the best way. But they could also call 913-780-7000 and just ask for Erik Erazo and they'll direct you to me.
Well, we'll include that all in the show notes today. Thank you very much for joining us, for telling your story, but most important for the difference you're making and helping other people. And I think there's great lessons to learn. And as you said, it's not about a bike club.
It's not.
It's about people helping people.
Correct.
And making a difference.
Yes, sir.
And we appreciate it. Thank you all for listening today. And hopefully you've got some good ideas, thoughts, inspiration from today's conversation. And as a reminder, each and every day we have an opportunity, as Erik said, to make today matter. We're all given the same amount of time in a given day. It could be a word, it can be an act of kindness, it can be a deed, it can be volunteering, and the ripple of good we seek may very well be the one that we make. Thank you, and until next time, let's make every day matter.
You've been listening to Everyday Matters, a Netsmart podcast. Keep connected with us by subscribing to the show in your favorite podcast player. If you like what you've heard, please rate the show. That helps us keep sharing the stories that inspire our communities. Thanks for listening. Until next time.